Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news hour, we shall be discussing the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. In the editorial page, there is a news about the India-Australia Economic Partnership. Last week, India and Australia signed the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement (ECTA), and this shows the growing strategic alignment between both the countries. Earlier, the relationship between India and Australia was just limited to the relationship and colonial legacy of cricket, but now we are changing the strategic relationship and we are going into trade and other strategic engagements like Quad, etc. In June 2020, both Prime Minister Modi and Scott Morrison, they had a virtual summit and they decided to increase the level of economic partnership from comprehensive strategic partnership. And under this ECTA, the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, it's going to impact the economic and commercial relations with respect to trade and services. There are provisions regarding the rules of origin so that we can avoid anti-dumping through the other countries. Then there are technical barriers to trade and how the disputes should be settled, what are the customs procedures, etc. There are detailed guidelines about everything. And the main goal of this agreement is to double the bilateral trade between India and Australia, which is currently around 27 billion to 50 billion in coming 5 years. And how would this be achieved? This would be achieved by lowering the tariff barriers by both the countries. Australia would reduce the tariffs on almost 96% of Indian exports, which are mainly related to labor intensive industries. And on the other hand, India would reciprocate it by giving a duty free entry for the 85% of Australian goods in terms of value. And in the next coming years, slowly we are going to reduce the tariffs to zero for another 5% of Australian goods. And one of the positive things about this agreement is that there are certain issues between India and Australia when it comes to the dairy sector, because the dairy sector in India has to be protected and it can't compete with the Australian dairy sector, wherein the farmers in Australia produce the milk under the ranch farming and they have economies of scale. They are more capital intensive, but the Indian dairy sector, it is mostly the poor farmer in rural villages who owns the cows and who is participating in the dairy sector, and this would be a challenge for both the countries. Now currently the issue has been kept out of the purview of the agreement, so both the countries decided that we could solve this issue later on separately. And the other aspect are regarding the human resource management. Australia is famous for its education system. Many of the Indians, apart from going to the European countries, go for Australia also for the higher education. And the visa restrictions for the Indian students have been eased after finishing the educations, ranging from 18 months to 4 years, depending on whether they have completed a diploma or the PhD in Australia. The temporary work permits would be work visas would be given to the Indian students. And India is saying that India would also allow Australian students to do the same. And a unique provision about this agreement is the compulsory review mechanism. Until now we never used to have such a type of review mechanism in the part of the agreement. Now here, after 15 years, both the countries would review the agreement, look which country it has benefited more, what are the items that have to be reviewed. Just like how we review the GST rates in the GST meeting, the agreement terms of trade of the agreement would be reviewed after 15 years. And given the experience of India wherein the past FTAs have been not beneficial for the Indian economy, we have to be periodically reappraise the economic gains from such trade pacts, and this would be possible through such a compulsory review mechanism which is incorporated in the provisions of the agreement. Here we need not discuss the article on the issue of petrol price, because we have been discussing about what are the reasons, how the taxation has been impacting the petrol prices, how the crude oil has impact on the petrol prices In the text and context page, in the explainer, there is an article about EPFO. The article in the later part is technical in nature and it is related to the tax calculations, which is not important for UPSC. But in the beginning, in the introduction, there is general provisions which are important for UPSC. We'll just look at that. So this year, the context of the article was the tax on the employment provident fund contribution above the 2.5 lakh per year would be taxed, said the budget provisions. And what is employment provident fund? Under the EPF Act, any company or any firm or any manufacturing unit having more than 20 employees, and if the formal sector workers are earning less than 15,000 a month, it is mandatory for the employer of such a firm to open employment provident fund. The employment provident fund is basically every monthly contribution made both by the employer and the employee into a fund. It is like a saving scheme. Every month you contribute so that at the time of the retirement of the employee, they would have some money for their retirement. So under this EPFO Act, every month the 12% of basic salary and the dearness allowance calculated together, basic salary plus dearness allowance, 12% of this amount would be contributed by the employer and the equivalent amount would be deducted from the employee, and together both the amounts would be paid by the employer to the EPFO. So this amount would be invested by the EPFO into various government securities and it would be managed by the Employment Provident Fund organization. And there are various clauses wherein the employee can withdraw the amount for various reasons in between, a certain part of the amount, not the full amount, and the remaining part of the amount the employee could take as a lump sum when he retires, or he can take it as a every monthly contribution for his use. Now in the budget, the finance minister has said that any contribution to the employment provident fund above 2.5 lakh per year would be taxed. So why this 2.5 lakh cap? What used to happen is the contribution that was coming from the EPF was tax free and it gave an assured income, and this was misused by the certain rich people and high net worth individuals, because every year they used to contribute crores of rupees into the EPF accounts and they used to earn several lakhs as annual income and they were not paying any tax on this. So this was like a loophole. What is supposed to be used as a social security scheme was used by them to park their amount there and not pay taxes because the returns were tax free. So now the 2.5 lakh limit is put, and because of this 2.5 limit contribution to the EPF, almost 93% of the EPF members would be having below this 2.5 lakh of contribution. So the major part of the people are out of the tax bracket even now. So now the remaining 7% are the super rich and the high net worth individual who are supposed to pay tax, but they were using the loophole here. Now they would have to pay the tax in the future. That's why the provision was brought in the budget. And here you might ask a question that can the employee contribute more than the 12%? Yeah, the employee can voluntarily contribute more than the 12% to his EPF account, and even if the employee wants, even he can contribute more than the required percentage, but the basic percentage is mandated and that is the amount that the employer has to pay. But if the employer feels that he can voluntarily contribute more than that, he can contribute, and the employee also can contribute. And for other different class of people, when it comes to the government employees and for those other people whose PF accounts where the employees did not contribute, for them the limit was 5 lakh per year. The EPFO, the Employees Provident Fund Organization, it is also in charge of managing private sector employees' retirement savings as well as regulating those companies which manage their PF trust in-house. Certain companies with various criteria, they are allowed to manage the PF trust in-house. That is, they collect the amount from the employees and they invest it on behalf of the employees. They have a PF trust in the company itself. So the EPFO also regulate those companies. And the remaining part of the article is about the technical details and how the tax would be calculated and what would be the impact on tax rates. We need not go through that. We just need to know that it is mandatory when there are 20 or more than 20 employees, and if they are earning less than 50,000 a month, and what should the contribution of the employer and employee is equivalent. In the business page, no need to go through this Gatti Shakti article. We can skip this too. The deputy governor of RBI is saying that RBI, as we know, is in plans to bring out the central bank digital currency. There is no difference between both, just that it is a digital version of the paper currency. And the positive aspects of the digital currency is that the cost and the distribution efficiency would be there. The cost of printing would be avoided, and the problem of deficiency and the problem of taking back the soiled and torn notes and reprinting the new notes, all that problem would be solved. So there would be efficiency in cost and there would be efficiency in distribution, because once you digitally create it and with a click of a button, you can make the digital currency available. But in case of a printed note, it has to be transported, it has to be sent to the banks, then it has to be circulated in the economy. So all that problem could be avoided. And the other positive thing is the settlement efficiency. Now with a click of a button, the transaction happens. But in case of a large amount, if you are transacting, you have to go to the bank, deposit there. All that could be avoided. Time also could be saved. So the deputy governor is saying that the main policy of the central bank when it is coming up with a new initiative like this, it is that they have to take care that no harm is done to any stakeholder. So they slowly go for a calibrated approach. Step by step, they would make sure that everything is in process and everything is safe for every stakeholder. Those are the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.